I'm Patrick Watson, I'm an astrologer, and today we're going to be talking about the 10 different types of Gemini. I'm actually going to be doing the show today, so you really need to go somewhere else. No, you. I'm the real Patrick Watson. I'm doing the show today. You need to go back to the attic and eat a bucket of fish heads, whatever the evil twin does. Twins. So you were born with the sun in Gemini, the sign of the twins, the tricksters, the talkers. They're quick, clever and chatty, tricksters, talkative and two-faced, fickle, flirtatious and flaky as When the sun is in Gemini, the earth is in between seasons, and so all the mutable signs, including Gemini, are in-between states, in transition, fluid, changing, adaptable. Gemini is an air sign ruled by Mercury, so the fluidity of Gemini applies to Mercury-type stuff. Speech, debate, comedy, games, numbers, skills, trades. Since Gemini are represented by the twins, people with the sun in Gemini often experience things in twos, leading two lives, having two families, two careers, two sides, etc. One way to distinguish between different types of Geminis is to look at what planets are configured with the sun. Today, we're only considering planets which are conjunct the sun in Gemini. That means that they are at the same position in the sky. Different planets conjunct the sun in Gemini equals different types of Geminis. Sun conjunct moon in Gemini. If you don't know this guy's name, you certainly know his voice. Mel Blanc was called the man of 1,000 voices, and he did all the voices for the Looney Tunes characters. Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Porky Pig, Elmer Fudd, Sylvester and Tweety, Granny, Pepe Le Pew, Foghorn Leghorn, Yosemite Sam, he did them all. He was born on the day of a new moon in Gemini, so yeah, I think that definitely fits Gemini's reputation for mimicry in voices. Sun conjunct Mercury in Gemini. Tupac Shakur was born with the sun conjunct Mercury in Gemini, and he is of course a rap legend, a master, a poet. Mercury in Gemini is the talker after all, so of course rapping would fit the bill. Tupac's music was poetic and intellectual. It was multifaceted and showcased his many different sides: aggressive, compassionate, playful, hopeful. His poetic influences were diverse as well, taking inspiration from theater and Shakespeare. So yeah, kind of a Gemini. Now, you might be going, well, Patrick, not every rapper is a Gemini, and that's true, and I'm not claiming that. However, there do seem to be an awful lot of rappers who were born with the sun in Gemini, including Tupac's nemesis, Notorious B.I.G., as well as Ice Cube, Kanye West, Busta Rhymes, Andre 3000, Azealia Banks, Iggy Azalea, Kendrick Lamar, Fetty Wap, even Macklemore are all born with the sun in Gemini. It kind of makes you wonder what happens to rap as a whole when transits go through Gemini. Sun conjunct Venus in Gemini. Venus deals in romance, sex, and sometimes a little scandal. Billie J.D. Porter was born with the sun conjunct Venus in Gemini, and she is a somewhat controversial TV personality in the UK, probably someone Americans don't know about, at least not yet. She started out as a music journalist and got her big break doing a documentary on BBC4 called The Joy of Teen Sex. I presume eyebrows are raised at this point. She has continued focusing on issues related to sex, with documentaries on prostitution, beauty pageants, as well as sexual attitudes in China and South America. She's a charming, disarming interviewer who has such a Gemini-like curiosity that she's pretty fearless in asking some difficult questions. So here we're seeing Gemini's mercurial significations for investigation, reporting, and it's focusing on Venusian topics like sex. Sun conjunct Mars in Gemini. Mars, of course, is trouble, violence, and the occasional crime. Michael Franzese is a guy you probably haven't heard of, but he is so Mars in Gemini, I can't even Mars in Gemini right now. He was born with the Sun conjunct Mars in Gemini, and he became a prominent member of the New York Mafia. His skills at making huge amounts of cash earned him the nickname the Yuppie Don. He eventually was sentenced to 10 years in prison for racketeering, counterfeiting, and extortion for his involvement in a gasoline bootlegging operation. And after going to prison, he changed his life around. Now he's a motivational speaker, having publicly renounced crime, became a Christian, and created a foundation to help youth struggling with gambling addiction, which is a truly Gemini malady. True to being a Gemini, he has lived out two lives, essentially. That of a criminal and that of a, well, whatever he is now. Sun conjunct Jupiter in Gemini. Jupiter is the planet of excess, extravagance, and indulgence. Jupiter tends to magnify what it touches, so many people with Sun conjunct Jupiter tend to have enlarged egos, which is why it couldn't be more appropriate that, of all people, Yeezy, aka Kanye West, was born with the Sun conjunct Jupiter in Gemini. Yeah, Kanye West has a large ego, to put it lightly. He's the guy who interrupts award shows to tell everyone who should have been awarded instead. He's the guy who has a song called I Am a God on an album called Yeezus. He's the guy who said, I will go down as the voice of this generation, of this decade. I will be the loudest voice. So yeah, humility isn't this guy's strong suit, but even his ridiculousness can't overshadow the magnitude of his achievement and influence in music. He's thrived by existing between genres and conventions, as you'd expect from a Gemini. Sun conjunct Saturn in Gemini. Saturn is the planet of depression, hardships, ambition, and perseverance. Laverne Cox was born with the Sun conjunct Saturn in Gemini, and fluidity has been her cross and shield. Laverne was assigned male at birth. Her gender presentation was a feminine male, which in the late 70s and early 80s in Mobile, Alabama was not well received by her peers. The bullying was so intense that she even tried to commit suicide at 11 years old. But these tremendously challenging experiences of Saturn formed her into the unbreakable person she is today. Also, Saturn. Now, she's a celebrated actress in the popular Netflix show Orange is the New Black and a highly visible leader in transgender activism. When Laverne was asked on Twitter what inspired her to get into acting, she responded with a very Saturn and Gemini-like answer. Pretending to be other people got me through my childhood and the difficult times in my life. Acting is what I love. Now, not every transgender person has strong Gemini placements, but I think because she's so at the forefront of leading the way for transgender issues, it's appropriate that she has a more archetypal signature, a role model if you will, or the term she prefers, a possibilities model. Sun conjunct Uranus in Gemini. Uranus is known for being chaotic, boundless, and disruptive. Donald Trump was born with the Sun conjunct Uranus in Gemini, and yeah, I could almost just leave it at that. Gemini in communication, his stupid tweets throw the news cycle off for days, fact-checking. He prides himself on his ability to generate controversy, negotiate deals, and clearly has some sort of knack for salesmanship, all very typical Gemini-type stuff. But with the Sun conjunct Uranus, his broader purpose seems to be to disrupt established norms in various areas. In Gemini especially, a sign of facts and figures, he's essentially the emblematic figure of our post-fact age, unleashed from the constraints of logic and reason, with amazing results. Sun conjunct Neptune in Gemini. Neptune is the planet of unreality, fantasy, and imagination. MC Escher was born with the Sun conjunct Neptune in Gemini, and he's the graphic artist famous for exploring mathematical objects and impossible images. Remember, Gemini is the sign of transitional states, and Mercury is its ruler, having domain over numbers and logic. So Escher's artwork is literally shining a light on his mathematical imagination, pondering paradoxes and the infinite. This is a guy who produced images of stairs going up and down at the same time, and hands drawing themselves into existence. I mean, could that be any more Neptune in Gemini? I mean, dang. Sun conjunct Pluto in Gemini. Pluto is a planet representing fundamental forces, from the very big to the very small. Luis Alvarez was born with the Sun was conjunct Pluto in Gemini, and he was an extremely important experimental physicist. Gemini is ruled by Mercury, the planet of communication, and he invented a ground-based radar system that allowed radar operators to guide pilots to land on runways with verbal commands. He was responsible for creating a functional plutonium bomb for the Manhattan Project, and he actually witnessed the nuclear bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki to measure its impacts. And to top it off, he discovered new states of particles and won a Nobel Prize. And typical for a Gemini leading two lives in a sense, here's what he said about his own life in his autobiography. I think of myself as having had two separate careers, one in science and one in aviation. I found the two almost equally rewarding. Said like a true Gemini. Conjunct Pluto, of course. Sun conjunct multiple planets in Gemini. It gets trickier to interpret when multiple planets are conjunct the Sun because you have to blend their interpretation together. Christy Martin was a pioneering female boxer who legitimized the sport of boxing for women. She was born with the Sun conjunct Venus and Mars in Gemini, and this combination suggests someone who challenges society's standards of propriety with force in the realm of contests and other Mercury stuff. And well, in her time she certainly did do that. She punched other women in the face. The hands and arms are said to be under the domain of Gemini, so with Mars in Gemini, her hands made people hurt. Di Vernon was a master of the sleight of hand and a grand illusionist extraordinaire. He was even known as the man who fooled Houdini, because Houdini wasn't able to figure out how he had done one of his tricks. His amazing card tricks were what made him hugely influential among illusionists throughout the 20th century. And he was born with the Sun conjunct Jupiter, Neptune, and Pluto in Gemini. He blew people's minds with the grand illusions he could make with his hands. So those are the 10 different types of Gemini. If you enjoyed this video, click like, subscribe, share this on your social media, your Twitters and your Facebooks, and leave a comment. And you can get my videos a day early before everyone else by supporting me on Patreon. And to all Geminis out there this month, happy birthday. You know, they say that if you ever met yourself in like a different dimension or something, that you would fight them or that you would fuck them. And I never really understood the fucking thing at all. Like, that makes zero sense to me. Like, why would you